We're just waiting for the last people to come in from the meeting room. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Montessori Show. Make sure your microphones are all muted so that we can hear the speakers. And the last people are just coming in. So hi, everyone. I'm Simone Davis, and welcome to the Montessori Show. It's May 2020. And I'd love to introduce you to Jean-Marie Pennell, who's joining us from San Diego, and I'm here in Amsterdam. Oh, Jean-Marie, I have to unmute you.
Oh.
That was funny, huh?
You muted everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Montessori Show. This is a show that we've been doing for the past 4 years. And at first we were doing it every month, and then we kind of slowed down and we're doing it every quarter. And this is an Ask Us Anything episode. So glad you're here. We've got a lot of questions that already came in that we've gone through. Simone has gathered them all. So we're going to just go through them and hopefully answer as many as we can.
So everyone, firstly, thank you for all the questions. Oh my gosh, we were overwhelmed by the number. I had at least 80 via my Instagram stories and lots on the Instagram posts, lots who came in via email. So what we're going to do is to try and basically cover the most common ones. I've tried to pick one from each kind of tricky area. So your question may not specifically get answered. You can also post questions in the chat box. If we get to them, we'll do our best. Okay, so everyone hang in there. We're going to be with you for an hour, and I hope you all enjoy it. So Jean-Marie, is there anything that you're excited about at the moment over there? I know it's difficult times and things like that.
This is a nice way to connect. You know, I was just doing a Facebook Live and saying how I don't believe that this is social distancing. It's physical distancing because we've got a pandemic going on and we need to be responsible. But I feel that I've been very connected, like socially. You know, these Zoom calls that I've been doing every Sunday with my family that I told you about have been just wonderful. So other than just hanging in there, no, I mean, I'm excited to do this show with you and all that we are preparing that I think we're going to share a bit more about towards the end.
Yeah, that's also very exciting. Yeah, definitely hang there to the end. I'm just saying hello to Dana from Philadelphia and Emily from Prague in the Czech Republic, Morven in Scotland. I think she's been here before, Morven. Gio in Dallas, Texas. Keelan in Dublin, Joanna, hello, Liverpool, UK.
Lebanon, India, Germany, it's amazing.
And Pittsburgh, very
Ireland, that's where my daughter is these days, Ireland. How wonderful. Okay.
I had something that I thought would be fun to start the call with today. And this is based on a conversation that I was having with a few parents who come to my classes this week. And it was kind of about, it came up in so many questions, you know, like we want to get in there and set limits straight away. And we're saying no all the time. And how can we stop saying no? And I kind of thought, actually, I feel like there's like 3 steps. And like step 1 is kind of connection with that child. Because we forget, like, before you even start to get them ready in the morning, take time to read some books together, cuddle in their bed or wherever you do your cuddling. Like, make sure that you have their bucket full a little bit before you start requesting that they get dressed or that they eat their breakfast and those kind of things. So connection, I always say you don't get any cooperation without connection. So that's like the first ingredient. And then step 2 is actually getting cooperation. And in Montessori, instead of threatening and bribing and giving punishments, we're trying to build the child's intrinsic motivation. So things like getting a sticker, that's an extrinsic motivator. And basically, if you give them a sticker now, then they'll keep wanting something else to do it. And instead, we want to build the intrinsic motivation and to get their cooperation, to get dressed, to get in the bath, to eat their breakfast, all those things by a way of working with them. And so these are really lovely ways of like thinking creatively, to be honest, not manipulatively. They'll pick that up, won't they, Jean-Marie, at the moment's thought if you're trying to manipulate them. But, and, you know, just like we're going to go into the car now, and like, would you like to carry your backpack or would you like to carry my keys? And it's just giving them some simple choices. Or it might be saying shoes, and then you just count to 10 in your head so that they've got time to process that, oh, we need to get our shoes now. Even bedtime, like we get into our bedtime routine, and for us, we're adults, they've finished their dinner, so now it's bedtime routine. But what about transition time? You know, can we actually dim the lights in the living room, have some quieter time? And then they actually get the idea, oh yeah, we're putting all of the living room to sleep and now we're moving into the bedtime, to help them wind down, rather than we're switched on, and the parents expect that, okay, kids know it's bedtime, they have to switch off. And younger kids take moments. I mean, in our classes, I use a song to transition to snack time, where I start humming for the golden corn, which if anyone's done the AMI assistant infancy training, we all sing la 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 la, and the kids hear that, and it takes 30 seconds or so for us to sing the song, and then they start to finish up the activity they're working on and move in to the next thing. So you could think, oh, maybe we put on some nice quiet music at this time of the day, or they get some kind of signal that it's always the same. And then so that's step 2, cooperation, and trying to work with them. And then step 3 is kind of like, sometimes you just have to be the parent. It's time to leave the playground. It's time to go to bed. And I really think that Montessori is really great in that it's not like laissez-faire parenting, then the child's in charge and they can stay up to whatever hour they want. And it's also not really strict parenting that like, okay, I said it's bedtime, now go to bed. And it's very much like, I'm going to set a kind and clear limit. It's time for bed. It's time for rest even, you could say. It's time for your rest. You're welcome to read your book. And I'm going to go make my cup of tea now. What's the one last thing you want to tell me? And then it's done for the day.
Beautiful.
And they start to tell you the next thing, you just say, oh, it sounds really interesting. I can't wait to hear about it tomorrow morning. I love you. I'll see you in the morning. And you just say the same thing every day. All right. So hopefully that's a good basis to start with.
Beautiful. And I will just reiterate it. Connection, cooperation, and transition, but also this last one, which is you are the captain of the ship. So just remember that. Beautiful. Thank you, Simone.
All right. So I want to start with my first question, which is from Sam. And she's been waiting a very long time because she sent this in a week after our last show, Jean-Marie.
Oh no.
So, Sam asked, and actually this is a really common question that came up in all the Instagram questions as well. Which is, my 15-month-old will take objects out of the shelf and then move on to the second activity in the next shelf. And while playing with the second activity, she'll then go back to the first activity and mix them together. Is this okay, or should I immediately put the first activity away while she's playing with the second activity? The problem is that when I put the first one away, she sees me putting it away and moves back towards the first activity. So what should I do?
So my intuition is to let her be in her flow. The toddler, is not putting things away as well as when they get older. So that would be my first thing, is to really let them be in that flow, especially if you have observed that that is the way that she is working. And if she's finding satisfaction, yes, in an ideal world, we put one thing back and we go to the next one. But to be honest, I have never, worked in a classroom with toddlers. So I think, Simone, you probably have a much better perspective on this one. And how do you deal with this?
Well, the 15-month-old, they come into the toddler class. So there's lots of small parts, and you see them quite tactile learners. They're touching and feeling until they really get into the one that they really want to focus on. So what I'd be doing is have a few activities available and then see which one they seem to work with for longer. So you can, again, do like observation, which is that objective, like this is what time they started this one and what time they finished that one. And like, if I actually just watch when they go to the second one, how do they mix them together? Okay, maybe they're making some connection there, or maybe it's not clear what the activity is for. And so you can make some observations, and how would I adjust the activities based on what they're interested in? Because if there's one that's really, they just keep throwing it all the time, pop that one away and maybe go back to something simpler, or maybe it's not challenging enough. So then you just it's trial and error. And it also, at this age, I feel like they learn a lot from other children. So if you are ever going to a play group, which is very difficult at these moments, then it's great. Or if they have siblings, you might find that the younger children can learn a lot from watching the older ones. But putting things back, I do model it a lot in that classroom, but I try to find that fine line. Like if I get too close to them, I end up distracting them. So maybe I give them some space, and then, after half an hour and we've used everything, then I might say, oh, I'm going to put this back here and this one goes here. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes they come over to help you, and then you start collaborating. And then over time you can say, oh, that goes back on the shelf here, and you can give them more instructions. And then the 2.5-year-olds are the ones who often will do it by themselves. And then at home, I also can be maybe a bit more relaxed about it and say, as long as it's up before lunchtime, and there's only 6 activities to put back, it's maybe going to be okay.
Right. And this to me is a good point too, is, being vigilant on how many activities you have out on a shelf too, because that's when I think it can get a little overwhelming for parents if the children are, taking too many things out at once. But to me, it's about respecting their flow. And when you see that there is a break, then we can put everything back and start over.
Yeah. And similarly, her second question is, my toddler also quickly moves on from one activity to another without completing the task. Any tips for getting her to complete the task without darting on to the next activity?
This to me just comes with time, I think. And this, I think, also goes back to your point about, observing whether it is challenging, too challenging, or not enough challenging. That's often, a sign if they're not really completely interested. And it's also, a good time for you to observe. Maybe there's a part of the activity that is too challenging and you just need to show that one particular part over again.
Yeah. And also what I would say, like, to me, hand washing comes to mind in this instance, because there's a very long sequence of things, but actually a very young toddler around 15 months will maybe just be interested in getting the water, taking it to the bowl, getting the water, taking it to the bowl, and not even getting their hands in the water yet. So noticing what the point of interest is that they want to repeat. And so, yeah, completion of the task and that whole sequence will build over time in a natural way. That's what I'd add to that as well. And then similar to, concentration questions, I've put them all together. Emily asked, how do you encourage your child to engage with a prepared environment? Our 20-month-old really struggles to meaningfully complete any shelf work and chooses mostly to move pieces about. We've tried varying the level of the challenges of the materials we present. With no success, she won't engage. And there were a few people in Instagram stories and everything that's kind of like, they're ignoring the shelf completely, or only like when we're getting ready for bed. And, what about that?
Well, that to me, again, is, a great observation that you're making about what is interesting to them. And there might be those activities are not particularly something that they want to engage in, but they'd rather do bigger, moving big things around, or helping you do practical life, or just being more connected. So to me, there's no good or bad in these observations. It's just observation. It's just noticing what your child is interested in. And I wouldn't take offense of, that they're not interacting with what you've prepared for them.
Yeah, I think that sometimes children aren't into the shelf work at certain times. Like at the moment here in the Netherlands, the weather's lovely, so that the kids are kind of drawn to be outdoors and to do those kind of activities more. And also, I think sometimes we don't see value in work that's not this like academic activity. And there's a lot to say about socializing. And at the moment when we're at home together, maybe the most that our children are going to be learning is about how they get along with their siblings and with us. And there's a great lot of social development going on. Also many language opportunities and talking. So again, yeah, observation is what we always come back to, is like, what are they engaging in? And what can we provide that might be of interest to them? And maybe the kind of shelf work might get more into a topic specific kind of thing. Like everyone's into hospitals right now. So maybe we can make something that's related to our current situation that might engage them as well.
Yeah. And there's a question, if you wouldn't mind kind of elaborating on that, but Claire in the chat is asking, how do you apply this for a 12-month-old? I observe and try to set the shelf, etc., but she moves everything within a couple of minutes. So please help. So it sounds like your 12-year-old wants to help you organize things. So
The 12-month-old is the same as before, and they're moving things a lot. I mean, in my baby class, so I go up to about 16 months in my baby class, and it's very tactile learning. And so I might see a child take the ring stacker and they walk across the room and they leave it over there, and then they walk over here, and then they watch a little moment for someone else to do something, and then they get a block from this toy and they see if it fits into that toy, and then it doesn't, and then all of a sudden they do notice it does go in, but it's very random. And then you start to see month by month more steps falling into place. So it's much more organic, much more exploration at 12 months. And yeah, it's not the beautiful shelves. And maybe for moments you will see that, to keep your distance to see if they actually struggle and have success with something. Or maybe it's not used in exactly the way that we expect it. And that's okay too, because maybe they've worked out that a shoelace fits in that box and out again and in and out, So I think that can be actually really fun.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And sorry, Simone, but just to piggyback, Megan has a question about how do I introduce the shelf to my almost 6-month-old?
I think 6 months is a great time to have a shelf.
Exactly.
Actually, from birth, I love to just have, 6 of their simple toys. Because also what we didn't mention is, like, when you have 6 activities, is they each have their special spot. And then they realize that there's a place for everything and everything in their place. And so if you start at 6 months, this is their point of reference, and they're going to orientate to, oh, this is where, those toys are, where I can go and explore them, and if you have for 6-month-olds, they're starting to be tactile. They're working out how, like, shaking something and it makes a noise. They may not quite be doing intentional release yet, where they can drop a ball in to another thing, but you could maybe have something out so they could kind of, take out the ball and start with the process of a permanent box, object permanence box.
And just to clarify, for I think it's Megan asking for the 6-month-old, the shelf is actually from the beginning. It's really this, this visual organization that you have in your home, in their room, so that they know that this is going to be where we have activities, where activities go back. So a shelf can actually be set up from day one. So yeah.
And I'm going to do one last question about the
yes,
shelf.
Yes.
That closed. But we also had a question about a 21-month-old who doesn't take it to the table. They just are at the shelf and they work there. And so I would say, like, if they're deep in concentration, then I wouldn't distract them to bring it to the shelf. But if you notice they go and stand next to an activity, around 21 months, there's probably like that tiny little pause where you can say, oh, look, and you can show them how you carry it to the shelf. But at 15, 16 months, I really let them concentrate, because you actually end up breaking their concentration. If you say, oh, let's take it to the shelf, then they just wander away completely.
Yeah, and I noticed that a lot of how in the primary classroom, the 3 to 6, different from the toddler classroom, where the toddlers just work at the shelf, standing or sitting right in front of the shelf, where the 2.5-year-old is going to take the tray to the table, and it's kind of part of the presentation. So it's fascinating how they work differently.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love seeing, around 2, they're much more reliable taking it to the table. They really feel proud of themselves to bring it back to the shelf, and it's lovely. All right, can I give you another question from Marilyn?
Yes, please.
Marilyn has a 12-month-old. He's very high energy and running all over the place. So I'm trying to have him sit at the weaning table, and eating is a disaster. So she's practicing 1 meal a day at the table. I think that sounds kind of sensible. And we are consistent with redirection to sit and stay. But I typically try not to restrict him unless something's unsafe. But how will he learn to sit and not leave the table till he's done if I don't give him direction? So
you're doing exactly what you are meant to do. You're following your intuition. I think this is great, to focus on 1 meal, to try as much as possible to sit with him, next to him, to have everything that you need right there, so you don't need to get up. And as time goes, it's also okay to say, oh, if it looks like you're done, like to really make him understand that when he gets up, that means mealtime is over. So 12 months to me is still 12 months. Did you say, Simone? Yeah. 12 months is still a little young, and I know parents are afraid that they're not going to feed their children enough and such, but this is how they're going to learn. So it's really about, when we get up, that tells mommy that you're done, and I'm going to put the food away. So that there's a real kind of, just a natural consequence of what happens when we get up. This is signaling that we're done with the food.
Yeah, and I think also at 12 months, they've just learned to walk, or trying to learn to walk. So of course their movement is really important to them. So actually, I know you can start a weaning table from the time they're sitting and they're taking some solid food. But a lot of people, and myself included, like to use the weaning table more for snacks, where they're learning to sit at the table, but for short things. And then when they're not eating anymore, then you show them that you're all done and you take it away. And then having the family meal together, because when they see you eating, and you're also learning about family, being in a family together. So you can have, rather than a high chair where there's a big thing away from the table, have more like a stocky chair where they can sit up at the table with you and be involved.
Yes, definitely. And that, to me, I just want to reiterate that, like, having meals with your children is the way that they learn, because you are modeling what it is to sit at the table, have conversation, use utensils and all of that. So really try as much as possible to have at least one of those meals a day together, and being vigilant to have everything at arm's reach so you are not getting up to go get something that you've forgotten.
Yeah. So I have a question, which is also related. Emily asked, how do I get my 13-month-old to stop throwing his food on the floor?
Yes. Well, for me, one of the things that I, recommend is to really minimize the amount of food that we put in their plate, so that there isn't this need to explore, because remember, they're sensorial explorers, so they're going to want to do. And then we just repeat over and over that food stays in the plate, stays on the table. It's not for throwing. Balls are for throwing, and so forth. But this is very common, very natural. It's just exploration. It's just them wanting to find out what happens. So it's not enough. Don't take it as an offense. It's just part of the natural behavior.
And also, I think it's often a sign they're all done. Like if a 12-month-old is really hungry, I can't remember how old they said, a 13-month-old, if they're really hungry, they often eat, but it may only be eating for 5 minutes, and we're expecting them to sit down for a half-an-hour meal. Then, of course, they're going to throw the meal. So I might say, oh, are you telling me you're all done? And then I show them how we get down from the table, give them the plate, they carry it to the, and again, like you were saying, Jean-Marie, about ending it when they're starting to throw and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And just, it's going to take a lot of repetition, but we need to just really stay consistent. So whatever you choose to do, to say, just, it sounds like a broken record, but that's how it's going to be. Just actually, positive, respectful.
Yeah, I think that's important to say, is that we think that we're going to just say it once and our toddlers are going to understand. But if you have, if you're teaching them about not throwing their food and that we say we're all done, you might need to say that at least 100 times per day and be relaxed about saying that 100 times a day. So yeah, choose your battles wisely so that you can be kind and clear and consistent.
Yes. So there's a lot of different questions coming in, Simone. I'm just wondering if you want to go through the ones you have, or do you want me to just read some random ones? And just for everybody that is posting questions, please post to everyone, because there's a lot of them that are coming to me privately. I think it's nice that everybody sees the questions, because I think most parents have these questions, and then Simone can see them as well. But I will just read one about a 1-year-old and 10-month-old. He is a year and 10 months. Okay. So he is 22 months. My child hits when becomes jealous from anyone or want a toy from other child, or when he becomes angry. So I know we had a lot of hitting questions come in on Instagram. Yeah. So would you like to touch on that one, Simone?
Yeah, definitely. So hitting is one of the questions on Instagram as well was we don't hit our child, and where did they even get this from? And so we feel like we're a bad parent or something because our child's hitting, and we take it personally, it's at a front to our parenting. And I just want to reassure you, it's a developmental thing. They don't have the communication. They may be able to say some words it was my turn, but then the second time they just kind of give you a push, or they hit you, or they really don't like what you're saying, because at 1 year, 10 months, they're realizing that they're independent and they want to do something, and you're telling them, oh, but that's not going to be okay. So the struggle for independence is important for them to work out. They were a baby, they were dependent on you, then it moves to collaboration, and then to independence. And so it's doing this in a graceful way where they learn what the rules are of society, just like there are rules in society, like traffic lights to keep everyone safe, and a few rules. I like living in the Netherlands because there's a few rules, not too many rules, that it feels like a dictatorship, and I feel like it's like a toddler as well. If there's rules for every single thing, I can't do this and I can't do that, I'm going to feel so frustrated, or I'm going to sneak around behind your back. So a few calm rules. So around hitting, then what I would do is I'd be kind and clear. First I try and see from their perspective, it looks like you're really angry. I'm not going to let you hit. I'm just going to be super clear. I can't let you hit me. And then sometimes you get such a shock and you feel quite upset, and then you feel like shouting, or, you might say, that gave me such a shock. Check your child safe. I'm just going to go and to the kitchen. I'm going to calm myself down. I'll be right back. And then you're actually modeling that one calms himself down. I'm going to self-soothe myself, and I'm going to you know, take care of my own needs and then I can come back and help you. But if like they're hitting another child, then you need to step in like a bodyguard to come, but bodyguard and say, oh, I can't let you hurt your friend, you know, like we're gentle with our friends. It's my job. And John Marie always says, it's my job to keep everyone safe. I use it all the time now. I love it. So it's kind and clear. So kind of like we were talking at the beginning, like step one is like connecting with the child. I really understand your thing and getting their cooperation, trying to get paid in another way. Like, for example, when I say toddlers aren't trying to be naughty, like they're not trying to hit you and because they're naughty, they're hitting you because their world is not okay right now. They're frustrated because someone took their toy, because they didn't get the toy that they wanted. They might throw the toy because they're upset with something that happened. And so it's our job to translate for them. Like, it looks like you're really angry because it didn't go your way. Or were you trying to tell them that you'd like a turn next? And, you know, being the translator is hard, but actually really powerful because they're kind of like, oh yeah, that's actually what I want to say. Maybe that's enough.
Right. Yeah.
And then otherwise we are kind and clear, like, I'm not going to let you hit. And you can also, if they have hurt somebody, then they make amends as well. And I think sometimes in Montessori, I see people not doing that last step, which is so important to restore and make up to somebody if they've done something wrong. And so you then can model like, oh, I can see they've got a red mark here, or you might have a red mark. Like, maybe we could get a cold cloth and let's go and do that together. Yeah, can you help me? Or offering a tissue, like some of my friends in my classes, they offer a tissue to someone who's crying, which is just so sweet, because Montessori is about independence, but it's also about being part of the community. And I love seeing those little moments when they're starting to be part of the community as well.
And I think this is also just, you know, to make a point of the way that Simone was describing this, we're never asking a child to say, you're sorry. Like, that is something that is forced on them, and it will come naturally, but it's more this compassion. Oh, it looks like your friend is hurt. Let's see what he or she needs. Not, you know, I'm sorry, because then that becomes kind of this habit where they'll hit and then go, sorry, you know, and it's just, there's no meaning to it. So I think that's really important. I just want to answer really quick. There are several little questions here coming in about newborns and mobiles, and one that is really important here: is it ever too late to start Montessori? The answer is no. It is never, ever too late to start Montessori. Montessori for me starts really at conception. It is, you know, about understanding human development. It starts at birth, and your home environment from the very beginning can be established for your child to adapt to their time, place, and ease to adapt to their time, place, and culture with ease. And that's why we're so vigilant about the environment and making things accessible for them. So it's never too late, and it's never too early either, because I see some comments about, you know, waiting until they're 12 months old or waiting until they're 3-year-old. No, it's now. It's every day. It's about involving them in practical life activities. Is just really following their leads, understanding that they have different needs than ours. So yeah. Just needed to answer that whole group of questions altogether.
Well, you know, I've been busy with Juniper writing the Montessori Baby right now.
Yes.
Right in the world, and it's not just like a little supplement to the Montessori toddler. It's really like its own chunky like Bible for babies, because it's really learning that they're learning how to construct themselves, what Montessori people like to say. But what construct themselves means is like, how does the world work? Oh, when I hit this like mobile, it moved. Oh, what happens if I do it again? I made that move, you know, and they're realizing they have an effect on the world. So we're looking to make a really rich, like beautiful environment. So they learn about beauty, and they learn about like those points of references we were talking about, which gives security. They learn that we respond when they cry, that it's not always because they're hungry, but they have, like, it might even be that they've just got a little crease underneath their, you know, clothes, that they're lying on their floor mat or something like that. And also like the importance of movement for babies, because we do have to go in the car a lot, and we do need to go on the bike and move them in capsules and things all the time. But every time I could, I would lay Emma down on a mat. You know, I just always had a blanket or something, whether we were at the playground or in the kitchen. And so she could stretch out her body and really see, oh yeah, my limbs do this. And, you know, just seeing them watching their hands, like they've never seen these before. This is all new to them. It's so wonderful. So yes, never too early to start.
Yes.
And also,
never too early and never too late, because
yeah.
even, you know, even if you've got a 6-year-old and you just found out about Montessori, that's fine. Like it's never too late.
Yeah.
So did you have, go ahead and your questions that came in ahead of time.
Yeah, just to finish as well, is like the reason I also like starting early, even before a baby's able to talk back, is you can practice being this respectful, kind parent, because that takes practice. And then when they're toddlers and they're starting to talk back to you, and then a preschooler and really a 6 to 12-year-old will really give you your run for your money. So you've been practicing all that time as well.
Yes, definitely.
So Agni asks how to work on patience with a 21-month-old toddler who dumps everything when it doesn't go her way or gets frustrated.
Well, I think this is, you know, what you were saying earlier about the connection and really having that compassion. Like it looks like you're frustrated. How can I help you? And there again, I will also say that, you know, be observant of the environment. Oftentimes there tends to be too much in the environment, and that can just be a little bit overwhelming for them. So their way of saying there's too much, they just dump it. So it's just, you know, it's their way of communicating.
Yeah, and with frustration, I kind of have like different levels. It's the kind of like, first I might just observe or like ask, do you need some help? Rather than like me immediately touching their activity. You know, do you need some help? And then just wait and see. And then they might say yes. And you say, and then you might say, look, and then you might just show them again, like you say, the bit that they're stuck on, and then they have a little bit and then they can get further. Or it might be like, oh, can I show you? And you might actually be able to hold like scissors and model how it's done. Or a child may even say, can you help me? And they might actually let you, because you always want permission before you handle them, even your own child, you know, so that they're actually learning how like the scissors might work and those kind of things. And then there are some children who are just will refuse your help anyway. And they're the kind of kids that are going to dump it. They're frustrated and you're like, you're really frustrated right now. It didn't work out at all. And then 2 weeks later, they get it and they're like, oh, I did it. You know, so you just have some children who will take instruction, because you might just say, turn to the puzzle piece. Some children who want to see it, some people who want some help with it, and the last child who just has to work it out by themselves.
So there's a question for you, Simone. And it's an iPhone, so I don't know the name, but I love the Montessori toddler book as a guide. Is there a similar book recommended for ages 3 to 6?
Well, okay. Coming up next week, we have a workshop that Jean-Marie is going to be presenting that I'm hosting. So I will put the link to in the show notes so that you can already pre-register, and the invitations to that officially go out on Monday. So it'll be Saturday the 23rd, which is brilliant. And then as an actual book, you have to wait till March 2022, which is a long way away. Junifer, who's from Enduomo Montessori, and I are co-writing a book for the 3 to 12-year-old. So then you'll have a Montessori toddler version. It's not a homeschooling guide, but it's how you continue to do Montessori at home when your child's at school, whether they go to Montessori or not. So
yes, and just I know, and I think I can get the cat out of the bag, is that you're also working on the Montessori infant book right now, which is going to come out sooner.
Yeah, so exactly.
Yeah.
Baby coming out March 2021. Yeah, sorry. And then the Montessori child will be March 2022. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Thank you. Very fun. Okay, Carlotta asks, siblings, say 15 months and 4 years, how do you help the young one respect the work of the other while still letting them develop their bond during playing without intervening all the time? The young one destroys a puzzle or knocks down the Lego construction or draws lines on a drawing. I'd like to hear your take on this.
So 15 months and 4-year-old, you said? So there, you know, for me, it's about the environment, like to protect a little bit the 4-year-old's work. So if maybe he or she can do it on a higher table, or some of the activities are up on a higher shelf, or maybe can, you know, be in their room a little bit, so that there's a real kind of separation. And then there are other activities that they can do together, that it's okay that they draw on each other's drawings, that there is collaboration. But it's true that it can be, you know, frustrating for the both of them. And then the language there for me is always to ask them to have solutions. So how can I help both of you work together, play together, or, saying, I have faith that you know how to play together properly. So it's true, it's a little young for the 15-month, but, as Simone says, it just practice now because sibling rivalry for me is something that they need to be empowered to find solutions, because we're not always going to be around to resolve these situations for them. So really empowering them to come up with solutions. And maybe the 4-year-old is going to have a solution if you take the time to ask, if you see that she's frustrated, maybe she doesn't care, maybe she does, or he does. And it's really just important to ask, how can I help you?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those things.
Yeah.
So there's another question, and it starts to talk about COVID. So I'm happy to do a few COVID related questions, because I think that's important.
And then there's plenty of other questions in the chat. So
we're not short of questions tonight, everyone. There's lots of themes that are coming up, and we do these shows every quarter, and there's also lots of ways to get these questions answered for sure, I'm sure. So Suyan asks, how can we continue to support our parent community whilst in lockdown until September? And I think that's been really interesting, actually, because one of the positive things to come out of the lockdown is that parents have become more interested in finding out what they can do about Montessori at home. So the parents are on a very big learning curve. So I know that the parents who've been coming to my classes, we're not able to meet in person at the moment. So for 5 weeks, we did like online playgroup, where I organized as interactive as possible, because toddlers are not going to sit and look at a screen.
Yeah.
But we did it very interactive. So we'd read stories together. They would take turns to read stories to us. They would show us whatever they were working on. We did color games where the older kids would go and find something yellow, and the younger ones would follow and find something yellow in their homes and things like that. And then there was an opportunity for the parents to engage in Montessori discussions, and they were really interested. I think that there's also some really interesting programs that have been developed by some schools where they send home like a Montessori shelf of activities for 3 to 6-year-olds, so that they can start to have some shelf activities, which I think is a really interesting way, because parents then have to educate themselves on, oh, right, what does a brickwork do, and why are we doing that in relation to geography and maths, and how it all connects together, and you get to see the beauty of the Montessori curriculum. So there's different ways to engage parents. I think there's some beautiful things on Google Classroom that you can use, where you can set up a curriculum so you can have resources for parents, like these are some practical life activities. And I think sometimes it depends on the age of the children, but I think if children just were involved with practical life, being outdoors together, language, just in normal days, like reading books and being together, maybe at least for a few months until after the summer, that's, one thing that we could do. I will say that actually I've now stopped our online Montessori play groups because the children are mostly just being outside. So we're just checking in to say hello to each other and doing some Montessori discussion.
Yeah, and I will add to that, like, how can we support parents in our community is just showing up like we're doing right now. Just being here, saying, I'm here for you, to connect, to answer your questions. So whether it's, via email, a group video chat, something, it's just so they have a way to be able to connect and have a source to go to, because I'm not a big fan of, all these screens that, and unfortunately that's the situation that we're in right now, but all the screens for the younger children, it gets kind of hard. So I think it's just the parents need our support to what are the activities that I can do at home, and to really kind of take some of the pressure off of them that, we have to keep up. Like for me, that's been one of the things that's been kind of crazy with this whole COVID, is expecting, working parents to continue doing their job, and on top of that, doing all of the schoolwork. It's like, this is too much. So take a deep breath and see what you can do and enjoy it is, what's most important too.
Also, I think it's really interesting because someone said, like, is it possible to teach Montessori children without going to school? And I think that, like you say, like in traditional classrooms anyway, you spend 6 hours a day, getting kids, hurting kids in a way. And actually, I think that if you just spend an hour or two on schoolwork, you'd have the rest of the day free anyway, because you don't have to queue up to use the toilet and get that child to be quiet and those kind of things. So I think that in some ways you can just get that learning done effectively and then move on with the other parts of your day. I've seen people be super creative in like, okay, they've got some silly worksheet that they have to have 5 + 2. Let's go and do some baking and make 5 muffins, 2 muffins, and put them together. And, you know, they're just coming up with some creative ways to make it much more hands-on than there actually is in for them. So I think I do like the idea of like having a curriculum on the shelf, which is much more hands-on, if that's possible at all.
Which actually is a question from Kai Len. It is difficult to get my 5-year-old to do homework she has for school, and I'm looking for insight on how to get her to take the time to do this, and also how to incorporate cleanup. So for me here is just having, really having a daily check-in with what is expected, what are your needs, what are their needs. To give you a personal explanation of this today, I met with Simone at 9 a.m., then I had a live, then we have this at 11, then I have an interview at 12. I needed to let everybody in the house know what's going on. So it's just that daily check-in of, this is what's going to happen, this is what is expected. So for this 5-year-old, it's really like, this is what, your teacher is asking for you. When during the day would you like to do it? How can I help you? Let's set up an area. I think setting up a real work area is important. And just being, mindful that this is, for some, it's not going to be super pleasurable. So maybe it's some nice, classical music that you put on during that time so that they can focus, and reminding them that, cleanup is all part of it.
And I've seen some really beautiful daily schedules, and I'm not by hour, but just as long as they see in the block, like, okay, well, when should we get our work done? There's a few blocks here, let's move them around, and they're involved with when they get to plan out their day. Then you can just point to the chart and says, oh, we agreed that this was going to happen now. And yeah, they might resist you like, yeah, and it's 5 o'clock or whatever time you've agreed.
Exactly.
As they become teenagers, there was a really lovely Jane Nelson who runs all the positive discipline workshops and books. She gave this great example of, with the teenager, you make like an appointment with them, like, so what time are you thinking you're doing your such and such? And they say, and you say, like, is 5:33 a good time? And they go, 5:33 sounds fine. And then it's 5:33 and you're like, it's 5:33.
Right.
And then you just stand there, you don't say anything else, like, and you just keep saying it's 5:33. And then by the third time they go, yeah, okay.
And to be honest, like for the 5-year-old, I'm sorry that you even have homework to do, because there shouldn't be any homework for a 5-year-old. So that's, that's for me, that's also for you to decide whether it's worth the anxiety or the hassle or the relationship that you have with your child. Like, I don't know what kind of a homework a 5-year-old could have, honestly.
Too funny. There's one question about the COVID, which was you had come in about working full time and trying to.
Yes.
I'm just going to turn on some lights over here. These ones is really funny.
Yes, there's a question that came in on Instagram about with these stay-at-home orders, we're finding ourselves having to still do our work. We have young children, and this was actually a mom who works full-time, has 2 little ones at home, and her partner is actually working outside of the home. And she's also wanting to toilet, to toilet learning and all of that. So there, for me, it's really important to first and foremost ask yourself, what do you need, right? Because you are the main caregiver. So asking yourself, what do you need? That might mean getting up much earlier so that you do have a few hours of quiet time when you can get your work done, so that when your children are awake and they need you a little bit more, you're more available. Then when they nap, whether you do some more work or you nap as well, because you need to recuperate. So it's really about being creative of what is it that I need. And I know that not all of this, you know, is feasible, because I see, for example, my husband, who's been working from home, he is in meetings constantly. So it's not like he can really say, you know, what do I need? Because he's having to show up. So depending on what your situation is, to be creative. And if that also means saying to those people who are organizing meetings, like, you know, some of these I'm not going to be able to join, or can we have it later in the day or in the evening, is really important. And then the whole idea of, you know, wanting to toilet learn right now, and being stressed about the work, is I might try to dedicate a weekend where you're maybe not working as much, to really focus on showing and repeating the toilet learning that is needed, or just, you know, kind of being a little bit more relaxed about it right now, because this is a situation that is, you know, hard for many, and it's a situation that none of us have ever experienced. So we don't yet have all the answers, right? We don't know how to do this. This is new. So that's why, to me, it's so important to check in with yourself and just, you know, kind of be truthful of how much you can take on.
The other thing I'd say from the parents that I spoke with during this period as well is the ones who made a plan the night before. What have you got on tomorrow? What have I got on tomorrow? Who's going to be in charge of breakfast, lunch? Who's going to do the dinner cupboard? You know, because 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds pretty much need someone looking after them.
Yes.
So the person who has the lighter load at that moment would be the one in charge. And then you just can, maybe you will have to work, as you say, either early or later, and juggle a little bit that way. So I hope that.
And even though even though I did say I wasn't crazy about screens, one thing that I have seen and really enjoy is another family member reading, doing some story time, whether it's during, you know, with a FaceTime or Zoom or something. And that's just been delightful. Like, I have friends who are grandparents, and every day they're spending an hour doing story time. Or there's, actually, I just did a care package on my website, and I posted a woman who does story time on Instagram every day, and just these beautiful books. And so that can be, you know, something that they're doing kind of independently, where you might have some time to get some things done for yourself.
Great. So we have a question here: how to start teaching phonics? My son is 2.5 years old.
So, beautiful question. And for me, it's more about, is he showing interest, right? It's not your schedule as to when to start, but it's more about, is he or she being interested in the symbols of our language? So that would be a first one. And when they show interest, it's really important to just say the sound of the letter. We're not saying the name of the letters, we're just saying the sounds. And then from there, we can also do these sound games that are beautiful, that are really with either objects that are around the house, where you're saying, oh, I see something that starts with a B. B. What do you see that starts with a B? Oh, it's a bear. It's a bear. Things like that. So really kind of, it's just giving them the awareness of these sounds that are around, right? So sounds, all the symbols have sounds. They don't have names. It's really the sounds. And then really playing these sound games, either with objects that you gather, or playing that I Spy game of the things that you see around the house.
Yeah. So I think that, yeah, and also to say, like, not to replicate the Montessori environment at home. Like, you don't need a movable alphabet and the sandpaper letters and all of these kind of things, because, you know, they will put, you'll see when they start to show interest, they'll start pointing and saying, what does this say? What does that say? And then it's a really good sign that they're starting to get interested. And it's around 2.5, 3, when some of the children start, and some won't show interest till they're like 5 and 6. So I mean, Oliver's friend, he was 7 when he learned to read, and he went from not reading at all to reading a Harry Potter book in that year. So Montessori talked about sensitive periods, and that means that you're really looking at when your child is interested, and then it goes in so easily. I mean, it doesn't, if you miss that sensitive period, it doesn't mean that they're never going to learn. It's just more like me learning Dutch. After 14 years, I still make grammar mistakes and my accent's terrible, where, you know, my kids are obviously much more fluent than I am. Okay, that's a really short but, you know, useful introduction, hopefully, to those of you who are learning. And any resources, oh, I love this question from Dana, and there was another one on Instagram very similar. Any resources for families trying to implement Montessori at home with a child with special needs? I'm trying to find the proper balance between allowing my child to self-guide while still heeding the advice of early intervention therapists who insist that I must push my child to do certain things even when the child resists.
That's a tough one because, you know, again, that's going to be a kind of a case by case, but, you know, there is a whole curriculum, a Montessori curriculum for special needs, and knowing also that Dr. Montessori started with special need children to really, you know, help them with manipulatives and such. And to me, you know, here it's going to be really about following your instincts, I think, a lot. Like if you're seeing things that interest your child, that's how you get them to have focus and to have flow, because you're really feeding into their individual curiosity.
I mean, what I love about Montessori as well is that we do take every child as a unique person anyway, so it fits so well. All the same, you know, principles still apply, because if you have a child with a physical disability, their cognitive abilities are exactly the same as another child who's 3 or who's 2.5, and so they still want the mental challenge, but physically they might need some more assistance to be able to, you know, bring the tray over to a table or to be able to access the materials, and so you may need to modify. So it's giving as little help as necessary, but as much as they need, you know. So I think that's also really beautiful that, you know, they're so accepted for who they are in a Montessori approach, which is really beautiful. And I find it uncomfortable when you have to push a child. Like I had a situation where I've been asked to, you know, they're doing some language kind of thing, so I really need to say da, 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 you know, like to tell me first you have to say apple before I'll give you the apple, you know, all these kind of things. And it didn't sit with me at all well. So I said, if it's okay, at least while they're in class, I'd like to just talk to them as I normally would. And by the end of, you know, a year of being in my class, they were interacting with me in the same way. So for me, it was building a relationship, because this forcing way just felt like we were disconnecting as opposed to connecting. So I think it is a balance of really maybe not forcing it, but encouraging it in a way that they find interesting. The same as like a child who avoids doing fine motor work or something like that. You know, I'm not going to then force them to do fine motor work, but I might find other ways that are going to work on their fine motor skills that they will enjoy, you know. So prick work is one that kids love doing, like kind of pricking on a line, which is building up their hand strength and getting some control so that when they start writing, you know, so you can find hopefully ways that work a little bit with what the therapist wants you to work on, and yet works in a way that you're not forcing your child, that you're following their interests as well.
Definitely. And also I would just add that, you know, that your child has their own special gifts, and it's really about feeding into that as well. So just wanted to say that. There are,
I'm conscious of the time, but maybe we could do some quick fire questions now, because we've given, you know, deeper answers to these ones, but it really, like, the ones in the chat box will just give like 1 or 2 sentences to each to show them where they could go for more resources maybe. And then I have some more in our document as well. Do you like the idea of quick fire?
Sure. So one question, is there such a thing as a Montessori curriculum for homeschooling? Yes, there is. I personally do not have a specific recommendation, but we can think up. I know that there are many families who are doing homeschooling using the Montessori method. So there are curriculums for sure. So we can, you know.
Jean-Marie.
Yes.
Jean-Marie.
Yes.
Children of the Redwoods with Aubrey Hargis.
She has, that's right. Childhood of the Redwoods. And then I'm thinking of mainly Montessori, which is Pilar's, but that's more for the elementary child, so the 6 to 12. But yes, I mean, there is quite a bit. You just have to also look around and see, you know, what fits your personality and such. I'm not a big proponent of, you know, the homeschooling curriculums that are going to have a lot of worksheets and things like that. I would want it to be more organic and respectful of development in general and rhythms. Who is it that you...
Mother, Eloise.
That's what I was going to say. You interviewed her and I interviewed her. We both had her on our podcast, and she has a beautiful way, and actually just came out with a book on homeschooling, and she merges Montessori and Waldorf as well, and talks a lot about rhythms, daily rhythms. So that's a really nice one. We can put that in there as well.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat for everyone.
And one question that I just want to touch on too, what age do you recommend a potty training? So I like to say potty learning or potty awareness. And this is really about, again, following the child. It's about elimination communication. For me, it can start as early, you know, it can start as early as birth if you're really doing elimination communication. And I actually have a podcast specifically on that if you want to learn more about that, where I interviewed the woman who has Go Diaper Free. But for me here, it's about when your child is showing you through their body language and all this that they're resisting, for example, being laid on their back to be changed, that's often a sign of them saying, show me something different. So there's different thoughts of schools on this. Some say it's too early. I say follow their lead. I think that once they're walking, they can definitely be shown that as part of the routine. I wouldn't force it on anybody. It's really needs to be done, you know, smoothly and organically. But I do believe that a child can definitely be mostly toilet independent by 2.5.
Yeah, we just did a great toileting workshop with Fern Sales.
That's right. Yeah.
The recording is available on my website, and people have found that super useful because what she kind of says is like when they're young, you know, under 12 months and up till 18 months, is like you prepare the environment. You have everything ready, and you show them how you wash their hands, and you show them like the important steps of dressing and undressing, because that's going to be a step that they'll need, you know, and you start to give them confidence in how they look after their bodies, so that it's just one more natural step when you put on some training pants for a certain time to catch the little bit of pee so they start to feel wet. And then you can gradually, and also taking off their pants and having some pants free time so you can observe what time of days they go to the toilet, so you can offer the potty at certain times, and it can be very natural and relaxing, and there's going to be some pee on the floor, but you know, she goes into the language to use so that you don't make them embarrassed about it. And then some parents really choose to, at 3 years old, to take off the nappy and do it in a day, and that's also fine. But I do really like the idea of just scaffolding skills, just like we do. It's toileting. It feels a bit uncomfortable. It's no different to learning how to thread a needle and all the other steps of many other things as well.
Exactly.
We're not very good at quick fire, are we? We're really
what?
We're not very good.
No. We want to go into details. We want to give all the information. Well, I think we've covered a lot here. So, you know, hopefully this was helpful and supportive. So let us know if you have more questions. We will be back, and
we'll
like
hold
some
enough time. And Jean-Marie, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who are interested in learning about the 3 to 6 year old, next week, as I said, Jean-Marie is going to be doing the Montessori preschooler, a workshop for us. And so I will put a link to that in the show notes, and I hope you can all join us for that. It's $29 US, and it's a 2-hour workshop, and we'll stay on to answer questions on that as well. I hope you've had lots of fun tonight. Thank you everyone for sending in your questions, and and
the replay will be on our YouTube channel, and there you can also check out the more specific episodes, because there are you know, different episodes that we did on maybe language or positive discipline and such, if you need more support there.
It's great. Thank you so much, Jean-Marie.
Yes.
It's been you all, and everyone saying thank you. Thank you for giving your time to help us all. Thank you so much.
Yes.
You're welcome. I'm sorry we didn't get your questions, but thank you.
You're all very welcome. Thank you for showing up. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.